But Andrea, would you call that the perfect reaction from the team from the events of the last week?
It was a strong reaction in terms of result on track, but the strong reaction, you know, like it happened away from the track. It happened in the review we made of the episode, understanding why we find ourselves in this unfortunate circumstance. And I have to say I'm very proud. You know, like our culture has been tested by certainly a hard situation. I think we emerge even stronger, even more aware that we have work to do to make sure that we don't have to face these kind of situations. But at the same time, I think we have proven that we have a really strong team that we can be very proud about. And then it was important to transfer this sort of reaction, review, response, adaptation to what we are doing trackside. So good result today, good result yesterday already in the sprint quali. I think we see that there's some aspects to improve in terms of car balance, especially on Lando's side. There's high tire wear, graining. We would like to have a little bit more pace that we have seen today in the sprint. So lots of work to do in the few hours that separate us from qualifying.
And how are we to correctly interpret the balance between Lando and Oscar? Oscar just controlled that perfectly. It was welcome back, the old Oscar Piastri, on a high grip surface. Is your aim presumably to get Lando's balance so that he can be ahead of George, say, on the grid?
Well, first of all, I think you make a valid technical point, which is Oscar, once we are back at circuit where the grip is high, we can see how quick he is. We have always said that we see the behavior of the tire with the graining. That's kind of Oscar's regime. So he found naturally and immediately very comfortable. I think on Lando's side today, obviously there's a bit of an effect of being in the slipstream. Here the dirty air plays a big role. As soon as you follow a car, you lose a lot of downforce. But at the same time, even yesterday in qualifying, we saw that with Lando, especially I would say entry stability is an area in which we have to improve our car. So definitely, like I said before, work to do. And in terms of the grid itself, we have seen previously that from the sprint to the main qualifying, things can change by a large amount. So I think there will be not only Russell, there will be Verstappen. Yesterday, until he damaged the car in Q3, he was in the same tenth of a second as our cars. So I do expect Verstappen to be competing for pole position, but what's important is that we are there.
Understood. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Welcome back to the paddock. Oh, they wanted to stop. Yeah, there you go. There we go. Jazz. Nice. Bernie's personal saxophonist that she brings with her to every race, just to keep us entertained whilst we listen to interviews. But let's get into that and to Andrea Stella, what he had to say there. Look, for Oscar, first of all, I mean, how he needed that's going to give him such a welcome boost.
Yeah, every point that he can pick up now and close that gap, begin to show that right direction, and he'll feel confident going into this afternoon qualifying as well. He will know that yesterday in sprint quali, he didn't get it all right. There's still time on the table for Oscar, as many of the drivers will feel that there is that opportunity. So he will know that going into this afternoon, if he lifts his game that little bit more, like you said, fine margins, then he can continue to close that gap this weekend, and that's what he needs to do.
He said yesterday he needed it, just the pole in itself, but then the win. And just, I know a lot of these drivers like to say they don't believe in confidence and momentum, but it's a real thing in sport. And I think for Oscar especially, he started to just let his shoulders drop. And at this sort of point in the championship, it's no better timing. OK, the points difference is still very much in Lando's favour, but it's the right time to be sort of seeing this kind of momentum shift and for him to find this sort of level of performance. You
see what it means to the parents as well. We were actually, I mean, they're here, but we were sat behind Lando's parents in McLaren watching that session, and you know the legs going, and you can see that mum's living every single moment with these guys, because as we know, I mean, we're into the business end, as we're saying. That's 2 points gained, right? Quite simply, break it down like that. But Lando was worried about a bit of understeer, wasn't he? So you're going to have to try and dial that out, but they've got an opportunity now. Could be very busy session now that the cars are out of Parc Fermé. Yeah, the cars are out of Parc Fermé, so they can make any changes that they want between that sprint race and the qualifying this afternoon. It's very difficult to figure out exactly what to do, particularly in Lando Norris's position.
can he find enough time, enough car balance to put it on pole? If he puts it on pole, a lot of that understay will just instantly go away without the traffic. So they have to decide, you have to protect for the traffic, but you're aiming to be in front.
I was going to say the same thing. The dirty air is so significant here, and it kind of carries through. You can't really get rid of it because you have to follow at some point if you're not on pole position. So, yeah, I think that's the main thing is kind of you can't predict where you're going to qualify, but knowing if you're going to be in dirty air or not, and then sort of adapting your car balance accordingly.
But a huge, as we know, like qualifying always important, but now, on the evidence of what we saw there, we know there's a couple of overtaking opportunities. One's turn 6, one's at the end of the main straight, but we weren't seeing it there because of the dirty air, because of the quick nature of this track. The drivers might enjoy driving this, but again, with the mandated 25 lap minute, track position is all important, isn't it, for grid position, all important for tomorrow?
Track position is important here. We've got this mandatory 2-stop. You know, Pirelli overnight last night said they were going to look at the tyres. This is the most data Pirelli have had. Those 19 laps the drivers have done there. So stand by for some sort of update from Pirelli because, you know, they have license to change that overnight tonight. If they find something from that session, we'll find that out after the qualifying. So I think tomorrow's race, if you're in that free air, first of all, you can drive as you want. You can manage a little bit. You can protect your tyres. You can make a very optimum 2-stop work. We've seen cars much, much further back at the back of the train, really, really struggling with tyres towards the end of that session, not fit to close the gap. Like Fernando Alonso's a brilliant example, couldn't get close enough to Tsunoda or Antonelli to benefit from their penalties. That just shows how much that dirty air is affecting the end of the race.
OK, Max Verstappen, well, he made a couple of passes, didn't he? He made one on his teammate Yuki Tsunoda and Fernando Alonso and elevated himself from 6th to 4th. But he knows that if he is outscored at all tomorrow by Lando Norris, that will be his race done in terms of the championship this year. Let's hear what the Dutchman has had to say about it.
Hi Max, at the start of that we thought it looked like a different car to yesterday, but then you came on the radio talking about the bouncing and jumping again. So how much work is there to do to get this car in the window you want for this afternoon, do you think?
Yeah, it's been difficult so far. The start was of course good, and I think the first 3 laps I just pushed a bit more compared to the guys ahead to try and have an opportunity, knowing that passing was tough. But after that, yeah, you just get into the same trouble. And of course, the more the tyres wear, the more you feel those kind of issues. And that basically also then prevented us from really following them. I mean, I was basically just doing my own race out there. And that's, yeah, we need to work on that. Try and get rid of the bouncing, jumping, understeer in general in the long corners. That's still a big problem.
All right, thank you.
Well, if the McLaren garage is going to be busy, the Red Bull garage is going to be even busier by the sounds of that.
Yes, but how much do they react? Do they turn it fully upside down and risk going backwards? I think, yeah, it's this fine line. They've got a few issues, a few things that seem to be recurring issues, regardless of what they've changed from, well, free practice into qualifying yesterday with some bouncing. There's a lot they should be able to see in the data. We've seen it from Red Bull before. They've done, you know, big shifts, big steps. Brazil, obviously, was the biggest one I think we saw. But equally, I think Max is right there. He was just pushing harder. It's like the sort of Max of the beginning of the season up against the McLarens that could just make their tyres last longer, and he would attack and get us all excited and then drop off, unfortunately, with a tyre degradation. So I think they're going to have to do something because, assuming they're going to probably be in the dirty air, both the tyres aren't lasting for them, but also the balance isn't making Max particularly happy.
It looked a little bit better on higher fuel, but but Bernie, from the engineering perspective, talk us through it now. When you've got yourself into a hole like this and you're wildly off the mark and your driver's not enjoying it, what do you rely on? Are you taking the data, as you say, the risk-reward that Jamie mentioned there? How do they get it right? Will they have the answers in the numbers?
The answers will be in the numbers somewhere, and Max will have a good idea, I think, post-sprint qualifying yesterday of what he would have changed if he had his time again. They'll have worked overnight last night in Milton Keynes in their simulator, just looking at qualifying pace. Then tonight they'll look at their sort of race pace stuff from that side. So he will not want to qualify behind both McLarens. So I think there's a really good chance that he makes some big changes in that car going into qualifying this afternoon because, like we said, track positions is everything. If he starts behind, the chance of him closing that position to Lando isn't there. So I think there'll be some big changes coming.
Do we think there could be 3 teams in this for qualifying? George was very, very close. What, a third of a tenth, wasn't it?
100%. If George gets it right and Mercedes get it right, I think they can be right in the mix. And
Red Bull.
Exactly. Well, basically who can put the lap together. This place is so difficult to get everything together, tyre prep, we saw traffic in sprint qualifying, everything to put it together. The driver that does that will obviously be on pole, but the difficulty is that if you make one of those mistakes, there's very much the chance you're not going to be P2, but you're going to be P5 or 6.
Okay, let's hear from Max's boss, Laura McKees, is with Ted.
Can we have a quick word? I suppose the performance there was just a consequence of the car as it was in qualifying. Nothing else could have been done?
I mean, it was a bit of a damage limitation, I think. It's one point loss today. I think it's fair to say that we are not yet quite happy with the car, so hopefully a bit more to come. It's our slot now to try to see if we can extract a tenth or a bit more out of the car, and otherwise, you know, it seems like the top 4 guys were quite close today, but on our side, probably something more we can do.
So can you do a Brazil whereby you found an amazing race car by Sunday, and is there something about the team or the engineering that takes a bit of time to find a perfect setup?
Let me put it this way, you know, the optimum performance window is undoubtedly very narrow. I think it's not a secret, but the guys are doing a fantastic job, both back at the factory and here, to never giving up at trying to find it for a given layout, for the given compounds we have, for the temperatures and conditions we have, and it's, you know, we don't rest until we are into that window, and hence the many changes that you have seen. So that's you know, the way we go racing. You know, we don't take second for an answer, and we'll keep trying. And sometimes it comes with some risk and some pain, but more often than not, it's been bringing some extra performance.
Great. Max is still in the World Championship, so we'll see what happens later. Thank you very much.
He is. He's clinging on by the skin of his teeth, but Max being Max, that's probably all he needs. And if they can get that setup right, then we could see a different Max in qualifying for the main race. We'll take a short break on the other side of that. We're going to hear from a couple of the Mercedes drivers.
Nothing frustration at all, and I'm going the right direction.
Go well this afternoon. Give me track limits for you, but also Yuki and others were finding it really tough to keep it on track out there. What have you learned you can take into qualifying this afternoon, and can you match George's pace of yesterday, do you think?
Well, definitely it's going to be important that every lap is valid for qualifying. I feel like you know, the pace was actually pretty okay in those last 3 laps of the sprint. Yeah, you know, big learnings from yesterday and also today's in the sprint. So yeah, just looking forward to the qualifying, and I'll try to make sure to do a better result.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a little bit of confusion around Kimi Antonelli's track limits penalties for lap 12 specifically. And so let's just have a look. So on the left, I've actually got his best lap from qualifying, which wasn't deleted. And on the right is his lap on lap 12 in the sprint today. So let's just have a look at this, because to me, if we just get down to that entry of turn 10, this is the area where people have been getting caught out. We heard about Tsunoda as well. Now, Antonelli on his quali lap, if anything, looks a bit wider from this angle, right? If you look at where he is there, the blue line is outside, the white line is correct. He looks wider on his best qualifying lap than he did on that lap 12 of the sprint. However, what we don't have and what the teams don't have, and I think this is where the argument, they were trying to make the case, because they were looking at this versus the stewards have an angle looking this way, and that gives the stewards a much better view of not just the front tire but also the rear tire, and to see where, just because the angle of the car, he has gone over the white line. But it was a bit odd, because he had initially been given a track limits violation, then the lap was reinstated, and then it was taken away again and gave him a 5-second penalty. And I could see why it's quite hard to see for the teams, but equally we have to understand that the stewards upstairs have got more and different camera angles. So yeah, tricky time for him, but in the end, both he and Tsunoda got the same penalty, so it sort of netted itself out. Back to you guys.
We saw that most of them were doing it yesterday, weren't they? Running off to try and open up that corner, Jamie.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing from Kimi's point of view that will be a bit frustrating is you get into a rhythm as a driver and you find what works, what doesn't work, and there you're opening up that corner. Okay, you go through your whole weekend, it never gets pinged, you get your rhythm, you find your and then suddenly you're midway through the race and you find out you're doing track limits. And I don't know how it was voiced to him, if he was told specifically it was turn 10 initially, but I don't know if there's a bit of confusion from his side because the whole weekend and then you get to the race and suddenly it changes. So I think obviously he now knows for the rest of the weekend, but a bit of frustration because you kind of want to know these things. You want to know in practice, you want to experiment, you want to know exactly what bit of track you can use because you need to use every single bit of it and obviously know more. But I think that's a bit frustrating for him.
I think like Corinne says there, we don't have all the angles. So the off-board angle for track limits is by far the most useful one. And maybe he was just inside in qualifying and then just outside in that race. And that's what's meant he's got the penalty. Now, probably the stewards don't present the data post-qualifying to say you're just inside, you're right on the edge, you need to be careful, you know. And therefore in the race he's done what feels like exactly the same but is just very slightly different. Particularly we got it towards the end of the tyres were going off for a number of drivers, more mistakes coming in. To pick up quickly on Yuki Tsunoda's one, it was actually Alonso in the car behind that was reporting Yuki Tsunoda for going off track every lap on turn 10. It took a while for the pings to start coming up from the race control messages, and then it's almost too late for Yuki Tsunoda then because he's already multiple laps into the race. But it's, you know, the wise old fox of Fernando Alonso behind that's saying, you know, he's off track, he's off track, he's off track. But it did seem a bit slow, if we wanted to be critical, with both the information starting to ping up on our screen and the information going to Tsunoda to warn him that he was on warning 2 or 3 as a result of that.
Always good on track limits, aren't they? You know Andy Stevenson better than most. He was always the master of that sporting director, wasn't he? I remember, where was it, Austria, where he went through
the multiple ones
and actually helped out the team. But yeah, Fernando Alonso, as you're saying, a wily old fox. No, not a good session again for Ferrari, both outside of the points and losing ground to the Red Bulls and Mercedes in that race for second. Let's hear from them both. 13th for Charles Leclerc, 17th for Lewis Hamilton.
Charles, Lewis said on his radio that he doesn't know how the team made the car worse today. Was that your feeling as well? Did the car feel worse today? And if it did, how so?
It definitely did. I have no idea how that happened from qualifying to today. The feeling has changed completely to yesterday. And I don't really know from where it's coming from. So definitely, experience for tonight and see. But I kind of agree with Lewis that today was extremely difficult, to not say worse than that. The first lap was just, I was struggling to keep the car on track. Lost 4 or 5 positions, and then there still lots of mistakes because it was extremely difficult to drive. So I don't quite understood what happened there.
All right, thank you. Hi, Lewis. Charles also said his car was worse today than it was yesterday, but from your point of view specifically, what would you like from the car now that you can tell the team about? And if it's a list of things, can you prioritise it for us so we can understand what you're dealing with?
I'll be here all day.
You don't have to give us the whole list,
yeah, I'll be here all day.
What's at the top for you and what could happen soon?
Well, I mean, we started from the pit lane because we wanted to explore and make some changes. They had some things they found on the simulator last night, so we implemented those changes, and yeah, the car was really in the wrong direction and very, very difficult for whatever reason, clearly for both of us. But we just don't have any stability. So when I say that, is the rear end is not planted, so it's sliding, snapping a lot. Then we have bouncing. So when you're going into corners like turn 10, the thing starts bouncing. We have a lot of mid-corner understeer, and then you apply the steering, and then it snaps, and you try and catch it. So it's different between low, medium, and high, and it's a fight like you couldn't believe.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, well, you probably have to laugh. Sliding and bouncing, they're never good traits in a car at any track, but particularly round here. I mean, you know, they're going to see huge tyre degradation if they can't dial that out, aren't they? Which is effectively reprimanding his drivers for speaking out of turn post-Brazil. When you look at a car that is almost as undrivable as that, what are they supposed to say when they come off and go into that pen. It's difficult for them, isn't it? That they are clearly both suffering the same thing, and their engineering teams aren't able to turn it round when they've got the opportunity and they're making suggestions to do stuff. That's got to be doubly frustrating as a driver, Jamie.
It is, because it's such a unique sport where every time they have a good session, bad session, a microphone's thrown under their mouths and they have to say something, and they don't say anything, they get criticised, they say too much, they get criticised. I think that's just part of the sport and the frustrations of it. I think for me the issue is just inherently the car is just got so many issues, and it's so tricky to get everything out of. I think the sort of window for performance is very narrow. When that sort of window is found, Charles is very good at kind of finding it and getting a result, but when it's so narrow, it's hard to know exactly what you've got. And I think what Lewis is talking about is, yes, he's got the rear instability on entry, but he's also got the understeer mid-corner, and it's kind of like you've got so many issues. Which bit do you pick apart? Which bit do you work on? I think the stability is probably the biggest bit, but then the bouncing, how do you actually go about, as an engineer or as a mechanic, sort of dealing with that in such a short space of time?
Looking forward to Christmas is, I think, what they're looking forward to at Ferrari now, and hopefully they can right things as we go into 2026, a new set of regulations, etc. Right, let's get into the mind games at the front. Now, earlier this weekend in an interview, Max Verstappen said if he was in a McLaren, the championship would have been done weeks ago. Lando's just had this to say at the press conference.
Max is, he's very welcome to say everything he wants, to be honest, he kind of earned the right. He's won 4 world championships. I have a lot of respect, and I think that gives anyone a lot of credit in general. He's achieved an incredible amount, more than anyone generally dreams of achieving. So, Max generally has a good clue about a lot of things, but there's also a lot of things he doesn't have much of a clue about. But this also Red Bull's way of going about things is this kind of aggressive nature and yeah, just talking nonsense a lot of the time. So it depends if you want to listen to it and talk about it like you love to, or you do what we do as a team, which is just kind of keep our heads down, keep focused. So maybe he would have done, but he hasn't so far, and he keeps trying.
They're friends. He's taking it on the chin, that one. Is he not going to get drawn into the trash talking, Jamie?
He's stoking, isn't he, Max?
Do you trash talk some of your competitors?
Always.
Yeah, I can imagine.
They don't know what's hit them when I come. Yeah, he's stoking, isn't he, Max? He's just trying to sort of stoke the fire and get a reaction, which I think he has a little bit. But they're all like that. I think Lando was guilty of saying to Lewis, I think at one point, when his car, it was easy to win those many world championships. I don't think until you're in that position, fighting for a world championship, regardless of what car you have, is difficult. I think they're all just thinking, if they're in each other's cars, it will be easier, and that's just the way it is sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's natural enough for a driver to sort of look, and Max is good at playing those games. He's good at trying to get under the bonnet, if you think of like someone else trying to intercept them. Lando Norris actually recently, in the last few events, seems very calm in his reaction to things, even on team radio. When we hear him at the end of qualifying, for example, very calm, very measured in his responses, not taking the beat from anyone. So, yeah, he's feeling pretty confident, and he feels he doesn't need to worry about it. Absolutely different driver, isn't he, since the first half of the season, the way he's come good in the second half. OK, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, as I mentioned, we'll wrap things up. We have George Russell.
You pipped him to the mic.
Yes.
Can you pip him to pole this afternoon? What have you learnt so far this evening? What have you learnt so far? Because you were closer than maybe you thought you were going to be.
Yeah.
And the start was competitive.
Yeah, I mean, my lap yesterday, I was exceptionally happy with, one of my best of the season, and obviously only good enough for P2. So I think we have to set expectations slightly. We know they're really quick. We actually struggle arguably a bit more in qualifying because the high-speed corners are so quick. We lose a lot of downforce on our car when the car is really low to the ground. But yeah, we'll go again and see if we can get in the top 3, fight for pole, and go from there.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's quite telling. Perhaps we didn't know that. We're furnished with some new information there. That's one of the best laps he's put together in the season. As you quite rightly said, he's got to put together 3 very decent sectors to have a chance there, for it would seem, against these McLarens.
It does, but I don't see why not. It's still so close. And yeah, the only thing I think what he was saying there with the downforce on the car, with, you know, actually when it's got a lot of downforce on the car and the car ends up being a lot lower, they actually lose points of downforce. That might tap out their ultimate potential, which might give a little bit more opportunity. Like you said, it felt like one of his best laps of the season, so maybe he's on the higher threshold. But if he repeats what he did yesterday, today, I think he's got a great chance.
And we get to the race proper. Again, clean side here, valuable to be on that. Almost better to be in third than second. But he managed to make that count, though.
Yeah, he will, but he'll completely erase that for his mind going into qualifying today, because you can never engineer a P3 rather than a P2 in these sorts of situations. So he's going to be trying to get everything he can out of it. He knows now, at least from yesterday, he's saying he aced that lap. He couldn't have got any more out of it. He knows he just needs to do the same again today and hope that the others make the mistakes that they did yesterday.
OK, here's the sprint winner, Oscar Piastri.
Hi, Oscar.
Hello.
Congratulations. A dominant weekend so far. What could stop you repeating that both tonight and tomorrow?
Mistakes, really, I guess. I think even yesterday, you know, they had a pretty big mistake on my lap. So I think, you know, nothing's guaranteed at all. You know, a lot of people can try and change things on their car, so other teams might find a bit more performance. I think Red Bull will probably find some pace. So, yeah, just because it's gone well so far doesn't mean it's going to continue that way, but I think everything's been smooth so far, which has been nice. And I think, yeah, the kind of baseline performance we've you know, come into the weekend with has been very strong. So hopefully we can just slightly build on that.
Well done today, thanks.
Thanks.
OK, Bernie, can you take us inside the garage? Actually, I was talking to Tom Stallard before we came on air here. He's saying it's so friendly still between both sides. Yes, they're competitive each side of the garage, but obviously they're working together as a team, perhaps less so now that the constructors has been settled. But how does the dynamic, what will it be like inside those two garages, do you think?
Yeah, I'm surprised. You know, I think they've done a good job of keeping it as friendly as it at least appears to be from the outside, and at least the story that everyone sells, because the first person that any of these drivers want to beat is their teammate. They're the person who's in largely the same machinery as you, and they're the person that we on the outside judge you against. So that is always the first person you want to beat. That is felt within the engineering office. Now, it's not like years ago. We both see each other's data, so you can see all of the other cars' data. You can begin to do improvements. They'll be forced into a debrief together where they both talk about mistakes they made, what they'd like to change, what they do differently. You both see the changes that other people are making, for example, and you're trying to develop the car for both drivers together, you know, ideally in a team. So there are some things where you're in that environment, but, you know, these people spend 24 races together, breakfast, lunch and dinner, 4 days a week. So it really makes a difference to your own personal well-being if you get along with the other engineers in the office.
Yeah, well, I imagine that they also feel like they're racing for an ethos, for a way that they go racing. They believe deeply in keeping it fair between their drivers. And there's a couple of ways to go racing, right? It's not necessarily the case at other teams, but it certainly is down at McLaren. And I wonder how much that means to them as well as the title.
It must do, and I think that is absolute credit to McLaren. I think a lot gets said about the way that they've gone about sort of the racing in their season and, you know, how they manage the two drivers. But I think deep down, if that didn't feel fair internally, yeah, they will be at each other's throats and they wouldn't be quite as sort of happy or comfortable, or as we'd hear remarks in the paddock, but we don't. And I think that is because genuinely they feel like it's fair. And when it's fair, although it's competition, at least there's the element of respect, and each side is clearly very respectful of each other, both from a driver's point of view, but team dynamic as well. And I think that is credit to McLaren, that maybe sometimes gets a little bit brushed under the carpet with other headlines that we seem to give them.
OK, let's finish off then with Fernando Alonso, who started in fourth, finished in seventh.
Fernando, a phenomenal lap yesterday put you in that position, but was it always going to be hard to maintain it? And is P7 a good result then today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, we know where we are. P7 today is better than what we probably have in terms of performance, and yesterday was beyond what we have in performance. So, yeah, I think happy with the points. We need to repeat that kind of yeah, performance in qualifying today in a few hours' time, and then tomorrow we try to win the top 10 again. Every point is gold at the moment for the Constructor Championship, so yeah, we are all in trying to help the team.
Thank you. Thanks.
All in trying to help the team and maximise a weekend, one of the best that they've had in terms of pace for a while, really, since just around the summer break and the higher downforce tracks.
Yeah, it is. The car performance did luck there in sprint qualifying, and today obviously they fell back. Bit detrimental for a driver that, you know, Fernando's now had 2 races where he qualified quite well and then he's just dropped back through the race. Interesting that with Lance Stroll's car they switched towards the end of the race just to get into qualifying practice doing push.
That was it. They were just using it as a
yeah. They put a
session,
soft tyre on. They did a push, a cool, another push just to get ready for quali this afternoon. So they need. Fernando Alonso said every point is golden at their position in the championship at the moment because they're currently sitting in P8 and that is not where Aston Martin want to be. So every point that they can gain relative to Haas and those around them is so crucial.
Jamie, what about Lance? I mean, it's not. Certainly, he started off, got a few points, got ahead of his teammate, and then it's just faded away for him this year. And he's really struggling in qualifying in particular. Like, he struggles to get out of Q1 so often.
He does. I think the thing for Lance is he needs, when the car is good, and it's not every race, it's maybe every 4th race, he needs to capitalise on that. He can't sort of just feel like the car's consistently in a place that isn't able to perform. I think what you see with Fernando is every time he gets in the car, he's trying to get the most out of it. If the car's not somewhere, okay, he doesn't, you know, get a good result, and it's frustrating for him and the team, but equally when the car is there, he's able to get the points and get the results. So I think he needs that sort of new lease of life. That said, I was impressed by him in the wet at Las Vegas, and I think he still has something to show, and next year I think when the car is hopefully a lot better, hopefully he can bring that new energy and bring something to the team with it.
All yours, Adrian Newey, on that front. Right, let's build it towards qualifying. They're all important. This one, though, again, going back to that question, on the evidence of what we've seen, for those 3 still mathematically in with a chance of the title, got to get in front of the others.
Yeah, all to play for in this qualifying session. It's going to be very different to the qualifying session they had yesterday. The track's moved on. They're going to be doing multiple runs on new tyres this session. So I think that it's all to play for, and it's going to be very interesting to see who comes out on top, who can get, as Jamie said, that perfect lap together.
Who pole will be?
I'm going to go with a George Russell.
I'm going to go with Piastri again.
There we are. Wait and see, but it was tight between them yesterday, as I said, just a third of a tenth.